everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is finally the day that I'm going to be teaching all of you to sew. If you've never touched a sewing machine or even seen one of these sewing machines or don't know anything about sewing machine, this is the video for you because I'm going to be teaching you how to use this scary looking machine, and I'm also going to be showing you all the little things you're going to need to go with the sewing machine and just, make it easy peasy so you can finally buy some clothes at the thrift store and alter them when they're too long. And then at the end, I'm also going to be teaching you how to sew a tote bag out of this fabric. It's very, very easy peasy. So let's just get into how to do all this before we get into this. So before we get into the actual sewing machine and what this can do, I'm going to show you all the supplies, what they're called sewing art, notions, all the things you're going to need as a beginner. So the first thing you're going to need is definitely some thread. There's different types of thread. There's polyester, cotton, there's silk. There's a lot of different types of thread. I just get the polyester one. You can get any length you want. This will be good for one project. You can get them all the way up to this, but this is mainly for a serger, so I'd probably get one of these two sizes. Next thing you're gonna need is lots of these bobbins because you're gonna be winding bobbins day and night on the sewing machine, and you're gonna want one for every single color, so just get a whole stack of them. They're really cheap, but you just don't wanna run out of them. It's really annoying when you don't have a bobbin and you have a new color that you need thread. The next thing you're gonna need are some sewing needles for the machine. Don't get them messed up with just the normal needles. These are sewing needles for the machine, so you're gonna need lots of them just because your needles don't last very long. They break, they get dull, so have an extra stack of these. You can get these universal ones and they're great for the majority of your projects. Next thing you're definitely gonna need is one of these bad boys, and this is a seam ripper. You're gonna mess up, you're gonna have to rip out a seam, and you're gonna need a lot of these. These are also very cheap. Next thing is fabric shears. You need fabric shears. This is a must, okay? And when you get fabric shears, do not cut paper with them. Don't cut anything but fabric with them. These are only meant for fabric. If you cut paper with them, they will get dull, and yeah, they're expensive. Don't ruin your fabric scissors. Next, you're gonna need a whole bunch of these pins. You can either get the pins, the clips. There's a whole bunch of different types of pins, different weights. Just get a general one to start with. Next, you're gonna need one of these and measuring tape just to measure you so you can pick out your patterns, and you're just gonna need measure stuff, so get measuring tape. And lastly, this is kind of a bonus and not a must, but if you have an extra one of these at home, which you probably do, just an extra large safety pin. This is gonna be great for threading elastic when you're making pants, pajamas. That's probably the first project I ever did was pajama shorts, and this is the first thing I used to thread the elastic through the waistband, so just have one of these on hand. They're very useful. And then of course you're gonna need fabric. I have some fabric here that I'm gonna be creating my tote bag with, but I also have this huge stack of fabric here of scraps that I use to do my stitching on, just samples, just to make sure the machine's running well and I got tensions, everything's good before I jump onto my good fabric. So when you're sewing stuff, don't throw your fabric away. Put an extra bin, have scrap fabric so you can use it as scrap fabric. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So now we can move on to this bad boy here. So this is just a general Singer heavy duty sewing machine. I know you've seen lots of people have this one. It's a great machine to start with, but I also recommend buying secondhand. I personally think that when you're starting sewing, you should just get a cheap secondhand one off Facebook or at your thrift store and just see if you like it before you really invest into a machine. This is relatively cheap, so if you can get one secondhand, this is a great one to start with. They believe this one's only like $150 to $300, I'm not really sure, but it's relatively cheap to start with, and it's a relatively decent machine. Although this one's not gonna last forever, it's gonna be a good probably for a few years, but if you're really wanting to invest into a really good one, there are a lot more expensive options out there. So for the machine, I'm just gonna show you all the features on the machine. So the first thing we have here is this dial thing here, and this thing just turns around, and this is just gonna be the stitch that you want. So there's zigzag, straight stitch, there's buttonholes, there's really a lot on here, but the really only ones I use are the straight stitch and the zigzag on here. Up here you see length, so this is the length of your stitch. A general one is between 2 to 3, that's usually a good one. If you want it longer, this is usually like a basting stitch. And then this one down here, this is where you really get to like the buttonholes. I usually have it around 2 to 3. So right here is the width of the stitch. If you have it on a straight stitch, it won't do anything, but this is only good for the zigzag stitch. So 1 would be a very long, kind of almost like a wavy stitch, and then the higher you get to a 6, it will be very wide and very crossed over. Over here is the needle position, and to be honest, I never change this. I leave it as is, just in the center. The only time people really change it is when they have a specific project and they want the needle to be lined up a certain way and they want to stitch straight. Like, I don't know, I rarely change it. And then over here is the tension. I wouldn't really touch the tension at the beginning when you're just starting. Just leave it at 4, that's usually the standard. So right here, this little button thing, this is for when you want to reverse the stitch. And then here, we got our bobbin winder. So you put the bobbin here when you want to wind it. And if you don't know what a bobbin is, the bobbin is this thing in here, and this is where the thread goes under. Wow, this is a struggle. This is where the thread goes under the fabric, and then the one here, when you thread it through, goes on top of the fabric. You need 2 of these to create a full stitch. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is over here where the needle is. So we have our needle here, we have our foot, and then behind here, which you can't really see, is our lever, so we can move the foot up and down so you can get the fabric in, and then you can lock the fabric in. Almost forgot. We got this little dial here on the side. See, the needle's moving with it. This is the hand dial, so you can manually stitch if you want, but you don't really want to. Usually you just use this at the very beginning when you're starting it to line everything up, and you can do the first few stitches with this, or not. You can just press the foot down because you do have a pedal, but you don't want to put it away from you. You only want to pull it towards you, this wheel thing. And then lastly, if you open the machine up like this, there's a whole bunch of little fun gadgets in here, buttonholes and stuff like that. I have more stuff in here. I have a screw. I have like little duster thing, you know, so you clean your machine, and a whole bunch of other stuff in there. And then also, which is pretty fancy, you're working with tight stuff, you can take this off so you can actually wrap the fabric all the way around. There's so many different possibilities with this machine. But now I'm going to show you how to thread the machine and also thread your bobbin. Okay, so now I have my sewing machine plugged in, and now we're ready to thread the bobbin and also thread the machine and put the bobbin in and just set it up. So the first thing we're going to do is thread the bobbin. Like I mentioned before, it's really annoying when you don't have any bobbins free to thread, just like now. So all my bobbins are threaded, so I need to unwind one. I need to unwind one so I can show you. So I got my bobbin. So now I just need my thread. So I'm just gonna use this white thread, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna have a little thing there that goes for your thread. And then you're gonna take your thread and you're gonna follow these lines. There's gonna be lines on your sewing machine guide. So you're gonna go around this little hook, and then you're gonna go around the second hook here. And then there's gonna be like a little spinner thing, and you're just gonna pull it back, and that's how you're gonna get it. It's gonna be like a loop-de-loop thingy. Then you're gonna wanna take the string and you're gonna wanna thread it through one of these holes on the bobbin, and then snap it on like that. Once it's on there, you're gonna wanna slide it over like that, and then your pedal nose, now when it goes vroom vroom, it's gonna pedal this thing and not the needle here. So I'm gonna turn the machine on. There's a little button on the side there, and I'm just gonna hold this string up that's through this little loop-de-loop thing. I'll show you right here, through that loop-de-loop thing. So once you have it through that loop-de-loop thing and it's locked over, you can go ahead and go down to the pedal thing down here, put your foot on it, and like you're driving a car, you just press it. And just like that, it's being wound. Look at this. But don't go too fast, because sometimes this falls off. It is done. Now you can push it over, pull it up, trim it. Now you got your bobbin all ready to go. So now that we have our bobbin and we have our thread here, now we can finally set up the machine to sew. So now we're gonna thread this machine here. So I'm gonna take the string here and I'm gonna put it back here. There's a little hook here, and then it comes with a little topper there, and that's where the thread's gonna go. Then you're gonna take your thread and you're gonna loop around the first one like that, and then loop around this top one here, just go through, and then we're gonna bring it down. You can also see the numbers on here. Most sewing machines are very similar where they have numbers, And just a heads up, some machines are threaded differently. This is just how majority of them are threaded. You go down here, you loop up through this little notch thing here, go up, make sure your presser foot, this is the top of your presser foot. So that is when you know your stitch is at the end, like a full stitch is when this thing is at its highest. So you're gonna bring it up, you're gonna loop it through here, like that. So it is attached like so. You're gonna bring it back down. You're gonna loop it around this thing, I can't really see. Loop it around that thing down there. Once you get it down in here, you're gonna loop it around one more that's like right on top of the needle here. And then you're gonna thread it through the needle here, which is very, very hard to see from the camera here. So this may take a few tries, but you're just threading it through the front of the needle here. Oh, look at that. That was a clean one. I can't believe I did that first try. There you go. And then you pull it all the way through until it's tight. And there you go. Your top thread is threaded. So now for the bobbin. My bobbin is straight underneath, but some will be on the side. This one is just right underneath with this clear case right here. So we're gonna take our bobbin, and usually there's a picture here on which way the thread needs to be, on this side or on this side. So mine says it needs to be on this side, so you're gonna drop it in on that side. There's like a little metal hooky thing right beside, so you are just gonna wrap it around, go around, and pull it, and that's it. Now we are going to fish. We're going to go fishing. So now we're going to take our top thread right here. We're going to hold it just loosely like this, and you're going to take your pedal thing on the side here. You can see right here what I'm pointing to. You're going to take this and you're going to twist it down, and you're going to do one full stitch. And then once it's back up, you can go ahead and pull, and you can see the bobbin thread came through, and you can pull that up. And there you go. Bob's your uncle. You are ready to start sewing. So now we can finally have some fun with this machine and start sewing. So grab some fabric, some scrap fabric, and you're gonna want two pieces, just two rectangles like this, and you're just gonna wanna put the right sides together. And what I mean by right side, the good side, the front side, the one you wear on this side, not this side. Put the good sides together. So once you have these right sides together, you're gonna go and take your pins, and you are gonna pin them together so they do not move when you sew. So when you're pinning it, you're gonna wanna pin, oh, this one's really bent. Let's start this again. So when you're pinning it, you're gonna wanna take your pins and you're gonna pin horizontally, like so. And you're just gonna do a few pins just down. This will keep the fabric together, so when you're sewing, it will not move and you can actually sew them perfectly together. So now I'm gonna take my fabric and I'm gonna line it up with the 5/8 here. That's the general rule of thumb for beginners if you're gonna do a seam, is you wanna line up the edge of your fabric here to 5/8. So I'm gonna line it up to 5/8, and then I also want the edge of the fabric up here to be about 1 centimeter, 1/2 inch for all you Americans, to the end. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put my needle down, and then also put the presser foot down. You definitely want to sew with the presser foot down. Some people don't know that. So the presser foot lever is at the back here. This goes up, this goes down, and that's how you get the fabric in there, and that's how the fabric moves. Now that we have it in there, we can go ahead and we can hold down this reverse button up here, and we're just gonna hold it down so we can do a couple back stitches because we want to lock in the stitch. If you don't do any back stitches, your thread's just gonna come undone. So I'm just gonna lightly press on my pedal, do a couple back stitches, and then now we're just gonna sew. And then when you get close to a needle, just stop, pull the needle out, and keep going. And when you're sewing, don't look at the needle. Don't look at the needle. Look at the edge of your fabric and just keep lining it up with that 5/8. That's how you're gonna get a straight line. Oh, close to a needle again. Pull it out. Close to a needle, pull it out. And then we're getting close to the end. I'm gonna hold down the reverse stitch, and we're gonna do about 2 to 3 stitches. Now we're gonna take the little handle here, and we're gonna twist it towards us, and we're gonna twist it until this thing, this little lever thing, comes up to the very top, and when it's at the very top, you know the stitch is done. You can go ahead, lift the presser foot out, pull the fabric, and trim. And I like to trim it really, really close to the fabric. And then you can go ahead and trim these top strings as well. And there we go, we have our straight stitch right here. So next what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump over to my iron and ironing board and we're gonna press the seam. Now welcome to the part of my room where I actually iron everything. Yes, the ironing board is like 6 inches from the ground, but this is all I could afford at the time in college and I just haven't upgraded it. And also this iron is like $5 from Walmart. So you can see this part of the room needs to be upgraded soon, but it does the job. So now that this is all heated up, I have my seam here and now we need to press this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open it up like so. It's gonna look like this on one side and this, and I'm gonna put the right sides on the bottom like this, and we're gonna flap open the seam like so. We're gonna open it up like this. And now we're gonna take our iron and iron it like this. So it's nice and flat on both sides. There we go. Ta-da! Doesn't it look amazing? Really good on this side, but this side, it's not done yet. So now we're gonna leave this area and we're gonna go back to the sewing machine now. So now that we have our seam pressed, we gotta finish this because otherwise this is gonna fray everywhere and that's gonna be annoying every single time you wash your clothes. So most of you guys will not have a serger. That's okay, I didn't have a serger for years and I just use this for everything. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a zigzag stitch to finish this off so it doesn't fray anymore. So on my machine over here, it just has this little turn dial and I'm just gonna turn it to the zigzag one. After I turn it to the zigzag, I'm gonna put your attention upwards up here and we're gonna change the width to, what am I feeling? Am I feeling really? Let's change it to 3. Let's put it on 3. So we had our seam like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna fold that and we're just gonna have this one little seam hang out and we're gonna sew this seam first. So I'm just gonna sew right down the center here. So I'm just gonna line it up right in the center there. And again, we're gonna do about 1 centimeter from the edge there. And we're gonna hold the button down and we're gonna do a back stitch first. And then once you do a couple stitches back, we can go and sew the whole way down. And then when you get to the end, go ahead and do another back stitch, about 2 to 3 stitches, and done. This is like so automatic for me. And then lastly, we gotta turn our dial and make sure it goes all the way to the top, this little thingy here. And then once it's up there, we can lift our pressure foot, pull it out, and trim. And there we go. We have our zigzag stitch on the end there. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do it to the other seam on the other side. So I'm gonna do the same thing where I'm flapping it over, putting it down the center, lining it up, putting the presser foot down, putting the needle down, and then putting my foot on the pedal. And we're gonna do a reverse stitch, do a couple stitches, and then go ahead and just stitch all the way. And this is how our seam looks now. As you can see on this side, this is gonna be the good side, so the outside of the clothing, what you see, and then this is what you're gonna see on the inside. You're gonna see 2 zigzags, and this is gonna stop from fraying, so when you wash it, the fray will stop when it hits the zigzag. So now I have taught you how to do a straight stitch and a zigzag. These are the only 2 stitches I ever really used in sewing and still use to this day, other than a buttonhole. These are the only ones I need. So once you know these, you can pretty much sew anything. So now we're gonna move on to the tote bag. So the first thing you wanna do before you start any project is you wanna iron all your fabric. Just iron it all. Is gonna be a lot easier in the long run because it won't be wrinkled. You'll cut everything the right size. Just iron your fabric. That's how I was taught, and you want to iron your fabric before. Now, once that's ironed, you're going to take the selvage edge. So the thing I'm showing you right now, that's the selvage edge, and you're going to pin both selvage edges together, and then it's going to be a fold on the other side. Once you're done that, I am just taking my fabric. I just rolled it up a bit, so that's why it looks different, but I'm just taking the fabric and I'm cutting it on the fold here. So I'm just putting my tote bag on the corner on the fold, and then I'm just cutting around it. So I'm just getting this big, huge square or rectangle. That's kind of like a square actually, and cutting that out. So it's actually one big one if I unfolded it, but I'm just cutting it on the fold. And then I'm gonna be cutting the straps on the fold as well. And then I also measured the straps on the fold, and then I'm cutting them, like 3 inches wide, just because we need to account for our seam allowance, and I'll get to that when we start sewing. But next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be taking my bag, and I'm just gonna be pinning it on the side, leave the top, and then the bottom will be a fold, so you don't have to do that, so just the sides. And then now I'm taking my straps and I'm just folding it together like a long hot dog, and I'm just pinning all that together, or clipping it, because I'm using clips here because I got a little lazy and got my clips out instead of my pins, and they're just really easy. I got them at Amazon and they work well. So now that we have everything pinned, we're going to take our bag here and we're going to do a straight stitch all the way down the end with a 5/8 seam allowance. And that is just this, 5/8. When I say seam allowance, it's just the 5/8 number thing on our thing, just like we did before. We're gonna do it on both sides. And when you're sewing, you definitely wanna start from the same side. So if you start from the top here, start the other seam from this top. Don't start here. It just makes everything more even. Then after we're done sewing that, we're gonna do a straight stitch on the straps here. You're gonna go all the way down, and then you're gonna go across over here. You're gonna do another straight stitch here so we can fold it inside out. So now I have my bag and I'm just doing a straight stitch all the way down, just like I showed you before, and it's gonna be in the 5/8, and make sure you back stitch at the beginning and the end, and yeah, just make sure you focus on the side of the fabric, don't look at the needle, but do a straight stitch all the way to the end, trim the not the needles, trim the excess thread. Oh my gosh, my terminology is terrible, but yeah. Did it on one side, then I'm gonna go to the other side, and also make sure you're pulling out the pins and you're not running over them. It's not the worst thing in the world, but better not to run over them. Okay, so now for the straps. What you're gonna do for the straps is you're gonna do a seam allowance of 5/8, just like we've done the whole time, but except when you get to the end, it's a little tricky. I'm gonna slow it down coming up here, but on my second strap here, 5/8 seam allowance. Get to the end. Once you get to the end, you're gonna leave your needle down in the position. You're gonna lift up the lever, that's gonna lift up the foot, and you're gonna go 90 degrees with the fabric, put the foot back down, and then sew, do a back stitch, and then it's gonna look like this. So the reason why we had that extra little stitch at the end is because we need to flip the straps right side out. So what I'm doing is with the end, with the extra stitch, I'm just putting it on top of like a pen or a pencil, and then I'm pulling the fabric down, and then I'm pulling the pen through and flipping it inside out, and then dropping the pen down. I hope that made sense. So after that, you have to press your seams. You have to press your seams. It's just like mandatory for sewing. It just makes everything look professional. It makes everything look nice and clean. It's just, you need to press your seams. That's my answer. And then I'm also pressing the straps because you need the straps to look nice and clean too. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just pressing everything, making everything look nice. Here's my seam. It looks terrible, I know, just don't hate me on it. It looks terrible. But after that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna be doing the top, and we're gonna be like, I guess, hemming the top or finishing the top, if you wanna say that. And what I'm doing for the top here is I am just folding over the fabric at the top, and I'm just folding it about 1/4 inch, and then after I'm done folding it all the way around and ironing it like so, I'm gonna do it another 1/4 inch so the raw edge is hidden, so it's not gonna fray, it's gonna look nice and clean, and then this time around I'm actually gonna be pinning it so it stays into place. So to sum that up, you're pretty much just folding it over twice, and the second time you fold it over, you're ironing and pinning it. So now we're gonna be finishing the top of the bag now. So what I'm doing is I'm starting on a seam, so you're kind of hiding the back stitch, and then I'm just sewing it all the way around the bag, and I just had it probably at a 3/8 seam allowance. I just kind of lined it up to where it fit best and where I wanted the stitch to be, and then I just followed that guideline all the way around the bag until I got to where I started. Okay, so now the very last step, we are gonna be sewing the straps on. So I'm just taking the straps and kind of lining it up where I want them to be on the bag. And you can see one edge is finished and one is not. So I'm pinning the finished edge one. And then this one, I'm folding it towards me, the unfinished, because I wanna tuck away all that fray edge. And then I just pinned it inside so we can kind of tuck that away. And once I pinned one strap, I went and got my other strap, and I just lined it up neatly and pinned them so they were exactly lined up, so they will be perfect when you're holding it. You don't want any of the, straps that are mixed matched and they're just not even. It won't look good. So take your time with this. Just pin it right. Find where you want it. So for the straps now, what I'm doing is I'm just going to be doing 2 back stitches, or longer back stitches. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the needle down, sewing forward, and then back stitching to the end, cutting it, and then I'm lifting it back up, and then I'm gonna be doing 2 of those, one at the bottom where my stitch is already, and then I'm gonna be doing it closer to the top, just so you know you have a little bit of sturdiness to it. And then I'm doing that for all 4 straps. And this is how my tote bag turned out. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I think it is so cute. It was such an easy project to do, so I hope it was really easy for you guys that I chose this project. I thought this would be the easiest one to do for your first one, so I hope it was easy. I hope your experience with sewing goes well. Let me know how your first sewing experience goes down in the comments below, and if I missed anything, any questions, anything further about sewing, let me know down in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them. But other than that, that is it for today's video. I really hope you guys have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your sewing experience, and I hope that I gave you a little bit more confidence and you're just feeling better about, you know, attacking the sewing machine and trying to use it, because I know it is a little scary, it's a little overwhelming at first, but I hope I helped you out just a little bit today with this video. But other than that, that is it. I'm gonna go now, I'm gonna go eat. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.